Amnesty International has called on the Nigerian government to launch an independent and impartial investigation into allegations of police attacks on protesters during the October 1st, 2024 and bad governance protest in the country. Its country director, Isa Sanusi, made the call while unveiling the report of its published investigation in Kano State, northwest Nigeria. According to him, police brutality on protesters led to the killing of 24 in Borno, Kaduna, Kano, Katsina, Jigawa, and Niger states, pointing out that the transparent investigation will help in bringing those responsible to justice. However, questions around civil engagement between law enforcement and civilians in protest scenarios continue to linger, especially in the area of human abuse. Well, joining me on the program to discuss this is Hassan Taiwo-Soweto, is the spokesperson for Youth Rights Campaign. He joins virtually. Thank you for your time, Hassan Taiwo.
Yes, thanks for having me.
All right. I know that you are very much pivotal. You were part of the End Bad Governance protest. You were neck deep in it, particularly in the southwestern region. We've also had you, on this program, even during that period on several occasions to talk about your experience and, of course, challenges so far. Now, looking at what Amnesty International is saying right now, or suggesting, or putting before the federal government, and what you've seen so far, particularly on the issue of human rights abuse being leveled against security agencies during that period, and the government's response, how would you rate it up to now?
Well, I think that we have to commend Amnesty International for that very damning report, which clearly establishes a prima facie case against the Nigerian state regarding extrajudicial killings of peaceful protesters in different parts of the country, especially the 6th state in the north, where you had people killed during the protest. I think that report clearly confirms what we have been saying since August, that the Nigerian state committed very grievous crimes against humanity during the protest, and that there was a need to uncover this. We are happy that Amnesty International has done this. What now needs to be done, is to call on the Nigerian authorities to be prepared to call for, to make sure there's a probe into all of these allegations, and to also ensure that the people who are responsible for these killings are identified and that they are properly prosecuted. And obviously, we have to ask the question that following this very damning report, we have to ask the question what the Inspector General of Police, Egbetokun, is still doing in that office. Because since August, we have seen, a clear pattern of, abuse of citizens' rights committed right there under his authority. And this is also being carried out by different.
Right now, if I got you correctly,
so
you sort of.
What is he still doing in office? We have to ask that question.
If I'm just to echo what you said, you seem to question why Nigeria's Inspector General of Police is still in office. I believe in person of Mr. Kade Egbetokun is who you're referring to there. And
yes,
I would like you to shed more light on why you are questioning his remaining in office.
Don't forget that prior to the protest in August, the Inspector General of Police made several statements, which in many ways, acted as a motivation to the kind of unlawful act that his men committed during the protest. The police issued statements clearly identifying potential peaceful protesters as miscreants who are out there to cause mayhem. That in every way is a dog whistle to the members of Nigerian police force to apply excessive force on protesters, and that manifested during the protest in August. Those are not the kind of statements you expect from an Inspector General of Police, who wants peace in the country. But apart from that is the fact that the same Inspector General of Police has succeeded, in ensuring that every attempt to expose his men who have committed some of these atrocities, he has ensured that some of these attempts, do not see the light of the day. For instance, since August, we have mentioning names of police officers who were involved in some of these dastardly acts in Lagos and different parts, but there's no evidence that anything has been done against them. They don't also forget that the hierarchy detention center, where the 76 children who were arraigned early this month, malnourished, tortured, and sick, that hierarchy detention center is under the direct control of the Inspector General of Police. And we think that he needs to answer, for how those children were tortured. And up to now, he's still in office. Apart from that, there are other acts that the police have carried out, which are clearly unlawful.
Okay, and so if I get you correctly, you said that
points to a dereliction of duty on the part of the Inspector General of Police, and that's why it does not have to continue to remain in that office, given what we know right now.
I mean, if I'm to get you correctly and understand you, you said that there are quite a number of scenarios that, according to you, is privy to, you've brought to his attention to work on, including names of some officers that have been accused, or that you're saying that, are complicit when it comes to these human rights abuses. These officers in question, are you aware if they're still in service? And if at all, I believe you have concrete evidence. I mean, can we know who they are?
We do have concrete evidence. I mean, for instance, in Lagos State, we have concrete evidence against a number of police officers who committed different dastardly acts against protesters in August, but also after August, during some of the different activities that we have been organizing, including just recently on the 20th of October 2024, during the NSAS Memorial. So that, this is not just something that we are saying on air. We have made representation at different times, to the police authorities on this. In fact, the Commissioner of Police in Lagos State actually promised to look into some of these cases, but nothing has been done. Also in Abuja, where we have had, the protesters who were detained, subjected to torture, subjected to sleep deprivation. We have equally made representation on all of these. I mean, for instance, Adaraboye Michael, another protesters who were detained at the hierarchy were blindfolded for hours, and they were subjected to all kinds of torture. In fact, we have concrete evidence from Adaraboye Michael and other protesters who survived the detention in that facility for 2 months. That the hierarchy is actually a killing slab. Detainees are being killed extrajudicially in the middle of the night. So that in that sense,
I'm sorry. I need you to, if I got that correctly, you said that the IRT is a what? Killing slab, and that detainees
it's a slaughter slab. It's a killing slab. It's a detention center for extrajudicial killing of
do you have concrete evidence on this, Soweto?
We do have account of those who have been detained in that facility and who have come out. In fact, Adaraboye Michael Lenny said that all of the times that he was interrogated, while he was in detention, it was always in the middle of the night, at midnight. And oftentimes when he was called out at midnight for interrogation, his fellow detainees who had been there before him for different crimes were always telling him that he was not going to come back again, because everybody who was called out in the middle of the night for such interrogation were just judicially murdered in the middle of the night. And they also reported, loud gunshot in the middle of the night, something which shows that perhaps some people were actually being killed, while they are supposed to be in the custody of the police. So
this is the IRT in Abuja, yeah? Sorry, IRT in Abuja, right?
Exactly.
Please continue.
So these are enough evidence, alongside with what Amnesty International has just done now, to ask for the Inspector General of Police, to leave that position so that he can then be subjected to an appropriate probe, himself as well as officers under his command, into a properly investigated, so that we can identify those who are responsible for all of these dastardly acts and violations of the rights of Nigerian people. Without doing this, obviously, we will only be preparing the stage for another murder of peaceful Nigerian protesters during the next round of civic actions. Because it's very important to say that even though Nigeria is used to killings every now and then, but that a time must come when we have to express moral outrage at a so-called democratic state, killing its people, because they are simply protesting over conditions of hunger and hardship. Today now, apart from those who have been killed, Adaraboye Michael and other protesters are standing trial for treason just because they protested in August. According to Nigeria's laws, treason carries a death penalty. So what that means, therefore, is that even at the end of the day, those who were not killed during the protest who are standing trial now, could still be, committed to death or sentenced to death if found guilty of a treason, and just simply because they protested because there is hunger in the land. And all of this, therefore, shows that it's not just the Inspector General of Police, who is indicted by this Amnesty International report, but it's actually the entire government of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Because what is happening clearly, it is very clear that President Tinubu supports the actions of the police. So far now, since August, we have not heard of at any point when the president openly and publicly condemned, what the police have done during the protest. And that is why it's also important to say that even President Tinubu himself, also needs, to be checked.
I think on that, just to come in a bit, Michael. Just to come in a bit, Soweto. I think on that, the president at some point did order thorough investigation into some of these concerns around human rights, abuses. But let's come back to the report by Amnesty, of course, being titled "Bloody August: Nigeria's Government Violent Crackdown on the hashtag End Bad Governance protest," released on Thursday. And of course, Amnesty International saying about 1,200 protesters were arrested during the demonstrations. I would like you to speak more on some of those protesters too that are still in detention. I know you mentioned Michael Lenin. Michael was actually on this program during that period, and I think a few days after, it got picked up. Aside Michael, what other protesters are still in incarceration?
There are many. There is Mosul Sodiq, there is Daniel Akonde, there is Angel Love, there is Opaoluwa. There are at least 11 protesters who are standing trial in Abuja. There are about 17, who are standing trial in Borno State. There are about 60, who are standing trial in Kano State. There are several other states that we don't even know yet where there are protesters still in detention, and we are struggling to see how we can get legal representation for them. So in many ways, despite the symbolic release of those 76 children a few weeks ago, many protesters who were arrested in August are still languishing in jail. And that is why it's important to call for immediate freedom for all of them, especially in the light of this report by Amnesty International, which shows that unlike what the Nigerian state was saying prior to now, that protesters who were arrested or who were even killed were involved in violence and in rioting and burning of buildings and properties. The Amnesty International report shows that many of the protesters who were shot dead, many of them were actually shot dead either in their homes, on their street, or in their shops. There is a case of a three-year-old Nigerian person who was killed, according to this report. A 3-year-old child who was just out to play on the street, and was shot dead by the police. There is a case of another 20-year-old who was sick, and then his friends came to visit him and decided to just see them off to the roadside, and he was shot dead. So what that means, therefore, is that this Amnesty International report clearly exposes the fact that the whole allegations of violence that the state has been using to justify the kind of repression we saw in August does not really exist, and that the only violence that took place in August was the violence that came from the security forces, that is the police and the army, who turned a peaceful protest into an orgy of violence and massacre. In a way, what we have repeated in many of those states, in August, was the Lekki Tollgate massacre, a second edition of it. That's what we saw in different parts, of the north during the August protests. And we have to say enough is enough to this. We want all those who are linked to these murders to be found, to be identified, and then to be tried, for the crimes that they have committed.
All right, Soweto. We'll definitely pick up on this conversation, but we need to go on a quick break. When we return, we will continue. Do stay with us. Many thanks for staying with us. This, of course, is still Politics HQ on News Central Television. And we are discussing, of course, a report by Amnesty International as regards what I would call an offshoot of the hashtag End Bad Governance protest, which happened in August. The report, which Amnesty has titled Bloody August. I still have my guest with me. Hassan Taiwo-Soweto is the spokesperson for the youth rights group. He joins virtually. Thank you for staying with me, Hassan. Now, let's look at it holistically right now. I know that you have been part of many protests over the years, And unfortunately, we always come back to discussing the quality of civil and, of course, law enforcement in terms of engagement. There are usually conversations around arrest, human rights abuses, and promises of an improvement. But it looks like nothing substantial happens. I would just like your assessment on this so far, and why you think we are always back to this conversation as regards how better, law enforcement can engage civilians during protest scenarios.
Well, it is for a very simple reason, and it is that the law enforcement agencies are not actually created, for purpose of protecting the lives and properties of the Nigerian people. They are actually instrument of class oppression and class coercion. Right from the creation of the Nigerian police, from the period of colonial rule and up till now, the role of the police as an agency for the suppression of citizens' rights, has always been manifest. So that when we even call for the police to respect the right of citizens, to respect the sections 39 and 40 of the Nigerian Constitution that guarantees the right, freedom of expression and assembly for Nigerian citizens. We're only making those demands in order to expose, the conduct of the police to the world, not because in the real sense that their leopard can change their sport, because for the Nigerian police, under this kind of capitalist economy system, to refrain from attacking the right of Nigerians would be to then completely fail, to discharge their responsibilities according to why they were created in the first place. And the same also goes for the army, and that is why when it comes to the question of police reform and all of that, it can only be, all of this can only happen on the basis of a complete systemic change itself. Without changing the system, the capitalist system of oppression and exploitation, the police will never be a civil police. They will continue to play the role of instrument of coercion. And we have seen that play out in different ways. Look at the huge protest 4 years ago, the NSAS protest around police brutality. You would think that by now, Nigeria should have done away with any element of police brutality. But then that is not the case. But look at the protests in August. During the August protest, many media stations and co were saying that the protest was peaceful in Lagos State and that the police should be commended, all of that. But in the real sense of the word, even though the police in Lagos State did not do as much as the police in other parts of the country, like in the north, going by this Amnesty International report, but in the real sense of the word, they also actually committed their own crimes against peaceful protesters. For instance, on August 1st, the very first day of the protest in Lagos State, members of the Lagos State Task Force actually broke the head of a protester after the protest had officially ended at Ojota and the protesters were walking home. This was part of the report that we laid at the table of the immediate past Commissioner of Police in Lagos State, and he has not done anything about it. And the person who took over from him has also not done anything about it. Apart from that, the police in Lagos State looked away while thugs, were attacking protesters on different occasions during the 10 days of protest in Lagos. But after the August protest, you have also seen the conduct of the police in Lagos State even change decisively. And that's why you saw, for instance, what happened on October 20, 2024, when, those of us who went to mark the NSAS memorial were brutally beaten. We were so much brutalized that you would think that the objective of the police was to kill us. Meanwhile, none of us was resisting arrest. Some of the protesters were also sexually molested. And then the last protest we had on November 8th, you could see that even though it was a small protest that was meant to simply deliver a petition at the office of the Chief Judge of Lagos State, the police rolled in with tanks, and they were clearly carrying out intimidation tactics in order to try and create fear among protesters. So all of this shows that there is actually no civil police anywhere.
Do you think, for some individuals, because you use the word, you said that it appears one of the reasons could be because to a very large extent, the security forces, particularly the police, seems to be tied or is an appendage of the political class. We know that to a very large extent, the president plays a pivotal role in the appointment of the IGP and all of that. some have recommended that maybe to allow for, quote and unquote, an impartial security apparatus, that agencies like this be independent of, the arms of government. Do you think that could be a solution, or is it a situation of these officers not being properly trained for scenarios like protests so that they can better handle civilians and not see them as enemies in scenarios like that?
Well, what I said earlier is foundational. That obviously does not mean that we can't have improvement if certain measures are taken. I mean, for instance, what we have just said about, independence of the police can, to some extent, help to ensure that the police, is removed from direct political interference and pressure. Also, like we have advocated previously, the need for a police union, which will give protection to individual police men and women. If they have to reject an unlawful order, for instance, from their superior, they know that they have the protection of their union. Then also the need for proper training of the police, yes, in civic engagement, all those things can have some impact. And of course, if the police is also well paid, it can also reduce the pressure that they face in brutalizing Nigerians. Because apart from attacking protesters, police actually carry out routine brutalization of Nigerians through exploitation, through an attempt to extort Nigerians, which often leads to sometimes exchange of words, anger, and then they release a bullet and they have murdered another Nigerian. And that is a product of the fact that the police are actually some of the worst paid, public or civil servants in Nigeria today. So if the wages of police also improved, if they have proper conditions of service and pension and all of that, it can also reduce some of this. But at the end of the day, the police will not fail to be what it is in a class society, which is an instrument of coercion and oppression. The same also goes for the army. So that is the point I was trying to make. But that does not mean, however, that there cannot be some measures taken that can have some positive impact in terms of how policing is done in this part of the world.
All right, Soweto Hassan Taiwo, thank you so much for your time on the program. We deeply appreciate your insight. And of course, stay safe.
It's my pleasure.
All right.